Welcome to the Battle Blog. My name is Ryan, and today's topic is game collecting. Now, have you ever seen pictures like this and wonder, man, I wish my game collection was like that? Alright, so my personal expedition into game collecting was all the way back in the year 2000. I had a friend named Mike G, and Mike, if you're watching this right now, you inspired this video, man, and you're cool. So back in the day, Mike G, he would collect all the Final Fantasy games. He would collect both the US and the Japanese Final Fantasy games, and he would take pictures of them and put them on his website. And I was like, wow, that's really cool, man. Like, you have both the US and the Japanese Final Fantasies. And he says, yeah, like, I plan on collecting all of them. Alright, so let's fast forward to the year 2003. I'm going to college, I'm working part-time, and I'm renting a pretty cheap room, and my parents are pretty cool because every month they sent me $200 for groceries. And I gotta admit, I didn't really spend a lot of that on groceries. I'm sorry, Mom and Dad! So pretty much every 2 weeks after payday and after I got my parents' money, I would go to GameStop, I would spend a lot of money on all the classic games. I would ignore all the new games, I would just go to the classic game section where they had all the NES games, all the SNES games, and all the Sega Genesis games, and I would just have a ball there. I would spend like $50, $100, sometimes $150. I mean, I had to drive to 3 GameStops to get the NES Tetris. That's how dedicated I was. And also I started collecting imports. I went to Little Tokyo in California, and there's this cool place that sold Famicom games and Super Famicom games, so I ended up buying the Japanese version of Final Fantasy VI there. I bought the Japanese version of Super Mario Brothers. I bought a Rock Board, like the Rockman spin-off game, which was a pretty cool game, but I couldn't even read it, but it was cool to have, and it was a rare game too. Yeah, I kind of went nuts with my money back then. Wow, back when I actually had money to spend. So I was amassing this really nice classic game collection. I mean, like, not as big as a lot of the pictures you see online, but because I had a small room. But it was just cool to have the games. I mean, it was just so much fun spending my money, like barely even playing the games. I would just have the games just sit there, but it was just cool to look at them. Oh, and I even bought a complete Rob the Robot. Yes, I owned a Rob the Robot. 20 years after it came out. And then, kind of came the time after I graduated college. I had to get myself a better job, and so I really needed a lot of money. So my game collection that I spent years collecting was kind of one of the first things I had to consider selling, which kind of sucked, but it was kind of necessary. Now let's kind of talk about where game collecting has gone in recent years. From what I heard now, game collecting has become a lot more expensive than it's ever been, even way more expensive than the mid-2000s. So if you guys remember the Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt compilation cartridge that came with a lot of NES systems, I mean, it came with mine, so I definitely remember that. Back then, in the day, like in the early 2000s, you can get it for 99 cents on eBay or any mom-and-pop game shop. But in recent years, I've gone to some mom-and-pop game shops, and they've raised that price to like $15. And on eBay, it's like $6, $10. I mean, like, the price gouging on eBay is insane. And also back in the day, like, you had games that were really rare, like Mega Man X3, which I bought for $50 back in like 2003, and now I think it's about $60. But you can buy it on the Wii U Virtual Console for like $10, which is what I did. And also there were games that weren't really as rare, like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy 3, which was 6 in the Japanese version. Like, they made a mass quantity of these games, but not a lot of people want to give them up, so that's what kind of drove their prices up. And also, so one thing I didn't like about classic game collecting, also back in the day too, and it still holds true now, there was a lot of elitism back in the day. Like, there were people that would say, you have the cartridge only, so you're not a real collector. I mean, what the hell, man? I remember reading, like, this one guy, he got a sealed River City Ransom for the NES. And he said he opened it because he wanted to play it. And this one guy went completely crazy, and I'm saying, like, why the fuck did you open that game? Like, they're not going to make any more of that game. I can't believe you did that. You, like, killed the value of the game. And, like, the guy was like, well, fuck you, man. I just wanted to play it, and it's my game, so fuck you. Yeah, like, and then that same guy who said, well, why'd you open that River City Ransom a year later, he had to sell off his entire game collection. So it kind of sucks to be him. Oh yeah, so one funny thing I remember, kind of back in the mid-2000s, GameStop was kind of getting rid of their NES, SNES, and Genesis libraries by throwing them in a dumpster. So, I heard there's a lot of people that used to go dumpster diving, and I thought about doing that, but I didn't know if I want to go back in the trash, and especially I didn't want to get caught doing that. I mean, I just don't think going through the trash to get old games was kind of sanitary. So as time goes on, game collecting, especially collecting physical games, is going to start getting a little more difficult because now, obviously, manufacturers aren't making games like these anymore. They aren't actually distributing them through cartridges anymore. So, and a lot of them are going digital. So it's going to be harder to collect physical copies of these games, but you can buy most of these games digital through, Virtual Console, PSN, Xbox Live, and Steam and places like that. Yeah, so I kind of like to show you guys some pictures of some of the gems from back when I used to collect a lot of classic games. So here's my Ace Attorney collection all the way up to part 4, which is Apollo Justice. So what was cool about the Japanese versions of the first 3 is they had the English versions on them, most likely for people in Japan to learn English, but sadly part 4, Apollo Justice does not have English on it. I got the special edition of Apollo Justice for on the Japanese Nintendo DS, so it came with this Gyakuten Saiban Encyclopedia, which had profiles, descriptions, and a sound test of the first 3 games, which was pretty cool. So this next one here is my Final Fantasy collection, probably back in 2007. I had the first game complete in box for the NES. I had parts 2, 3, and Mystic Quest for the Super Nintendo, all in boxes. Final Fantasy Adventure 1, 2, and 3, and Legend for the Game Boy, which I confess I never played. I just bought these games just to own them. All the PlayStation Final Fantasy games, which are not the greatest hits versions. Final Fantasy 11 and its expansions. I confess I've never played that either, but I did own them back in the day. Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, Dirge of Cerberus, Final Fantasy 10 and 10-2, Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and Tactics on the Game Boy Advance, Final Fantasy 3 on the DS, Final Fantasy Chocobo Dungeon, and Final Fantasy 1 and 2 on the PSP, which I never opened. And sadly, I do not own any of these games anymore, but I did sell them for a lot of money. So here's my here's my system set up all the way back from 2007. So here is my old flat screen TV, which I still have today. I had the GameCube, I had the Dreamcast, I had the Saturn, the Xbox regular. I had the Super Nintendo, the PlayStation 3, the Xbox 360, the NES, the Wii, the PlayStation 2, and the Genesis, and I had this small tube TV here so I can play light gun games because they don't work on widescreen TVs. Alright, so here's part of the shelf. I had Heavenly Sword, the Japanese version of Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, Madden 07, which I got for free from a friend. I got Wii Play, Wii Sports, Sneak King, Guitar Hero 2, Dead Rising, the Halo games on the Xbox, and Ninja Gaiden and Ninja Gaiden Black. I also had Conker's Bad Fur Day and on the Xbox remake, and I also had Monopoly Party, which was actually pretty fun for parties at Midway Arcade Treasures. So here are the 6 original Mega Man games, all loose in cartridges. And here's all 6 of the games, which were the ones I had the boxes and manuals for. So here's my Mega Man X collection, Mega Man X 1 through 8 plus Command Mission. The most I spent was for Mega Man X 2 and 3. I bought 2 for about $45, and I spent $50 for Mega Man X 3. And here's my Rockman collection for the Famicom and Super Famicom and the PlayStation. Rockman 1 through 6 and 7, the greatest hits version of 8, and Rockboard, which is a pretty cool game. You could get a translated ROM of that. And also my Rockman 4 came complete in the box, as my Rockman 5. And here's a really big gem in my collection, Steel Battalion for the Xbox. This was a pretty cool game, a very difficult game. I never got far in it. I'll probably do a video about this probably in the future, maybe in Awesome Video Game Memories. And here's my Warcraft collection. Everything up from 1 to 3, not including Frozen Throne. I never played World of Warcraft. I mean, I always loved the original Warcraft games. You know, I also have the Battle.net version of Part 2, so I could play that on modern computers. Yeah, so now, nowadays, my game collection is relatively small. I mean, I collect most of my games digitally. I have a pretty big Steam collection. I have a big Wii U Virtual Console collection. I have a big PSN collection, like the recent sales on PSN. I bought a lot of classic PSN games. Now I have them all digitally, and they work with my memory card saves since I have the PS3 memory adapter. So do I really miss game collecting? Kind of yes and no. I mean, I remember back in the day, it wasn't really about owning the games. It was more the thrill of collecting the games. I mean, I didn't care much for playing them. I mean, I would play them, but the real thrill of it was collecting them. Just waiting for the mail to come and hoping that that's the game you ordered, and also just seeing it on your shelf, and just the thrill of collecting it rather than actually playing the games was kind of the main reason why I collected games. Now I don't really do that anymore. I actually collect now to play them. And also, game collecting does cost a lot of money, and now as I'm a grown adult, I got a lot of bills to pay, so kind of gaming, it's kind of more of a second thought now, because since I need to pay my car, I got to pay my rent, so game collecting is not really the biggest priority for me right now. But but I do now collect games just now to play them. Yeah, so that wraps up this edition of the Battle Blog. My name is Ryan, and if you have any comments about game collecting, you can put them in the comments down below. So take care.